Welcome, folks, to the 52nd episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well. And proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. Well, the calendar has hit June, and we're dropping our first offseason episode after finally getting a clear picture of next year's lineup with the huge roster surprise, I guess, after Yuzhan announced he was bypassing the NBA draft to return during another crazy portal season. As most fans have seen from social media, a big push from our Lincoln Cougs NIL collective with their hashtag Wide Awake campaign has allowed us to bring back three of our starters in Sharp, Tugler, and Yuzhan again to pair with our three-star freshmen, Senac, Harwell, and Flemings heading into next season. We did lose Arsenault from our lineup to NC State, but did pull in Kalifa Sakho from Sam Houston State to take over Francis's backup big duties. And you know what? We also curiously had Pop Isaacs committed from the portal to take over for Yuzhan just in case we lost him to the NBA. But I guess we can all agree that we're happier to have Yuzhan back instead. Bottom line is this will provide for another loaded team heading into next season in what at least we're calling running it back part 2. And again, all three of us are back with Tom Ladiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. So we'll begin with some quick initial thoughts, taking a closer look at the lone transfer portal add in SaCo, and then just go directly deep into expectations after confirming that three starters and three-star freshmen will be running it back for next season. And then we'll close things off by taking a look at how we see rotations playing out going into next season. So, guys, let's get into it. Huge news and commitment from our NIL collective in getting basically every key player except Arsenault back for next season. Tom, why don't you kick things off with a brief comment in SaCo and then just go directly into the overall achievement from the staff of retaining key players again this offseason from a coach's view?
Okay, I'm going to kind of go a roundabout way of getting to what you talked about, Steve. First off, I want to talk about Arsenault. Before his injury last year, Kelvin said he was our best rebounder. He came back this year. I don't know if the expectations for him were maybe too high or whatever, but things just never seemed to click. He had some good games. He had some so-so games. I know, Steve, you're a numbers guy, and I think it's on the veer, but you always come back with, you have stats about when Terrence was in the lineup, how well we did. I mean, Stats don't always tell the whole picture, but it seemed like he was on the floor. We did pretty well, but I think overall it was good for everybody, good for us, good for Terrence. Maybe go get a different, go get some different scenery and see how he does there. Gets a reset and gets a fresh start at NC State. So I'll be watching as many NC State games as I can and wish him the best. But then on the flip side, there's a lot of competition at the positions he plays, and we'll all three of us talk about that coming up too. The next one I want to talk about is Pop Isaacs. And by the way, what is y'all's favorite Pop Isaac moment at the University of Houston? I don't know. Maybe Kelvin told him to go get a haircut and he didn't like it and he left. No, but seriously, it seemed like there was a contingency plan. Yeah. We lost a championship game the next day. Pop said he was coming to U of H. Milos goes into the draft. I was wrong about Milos. I thought there was no way he was going to come back, that he was pretty much committed and want to be in the NBA, but, surprise. He'll probably make more money here at U of H than he would, as a second-round pick. Some people were talking about guaranteed money. Some of that money is not guaranteed, and maybe he was not going to be assured of guaranteed money. But anyway, thrilled to have Milos back. That's like getting a five-star point guard. He's ready-made. I mean, he's had a year under Kelvin. He's ready to go. And it just seemed like there was kind of a contingency plan that if Milos did come back to U of H, then Pop had an agreement to go to A&M, even though Kelvin in a Zoom call a couple of weeks ago said there was no contingency plan. He said it was just a matter of Pop kind of looking around the room and counting heads and deciding, going to A&M might be a better option for him. But once again, just like the Terrence thing, it was a win-win for all parties. Pop gets to go to a program that needs a point guard at A&M, and we get Milos back. Getting to Kalifa Sakho, I don't know a whole lot about him, just from what everybody else sees. A couple of some YouTube highlights. I know he's sculpted like the Greek god Adonis.
Yeah.
What do they say? 3% fat is about as low as body fat you can go. I think it is.
Yeah.
He's got to be near the threshold of
no kidding.
body fat you can live with before you die. I mean, there is nothing on him. He looks explosive. He looks quick. He looks agile. And as most of us know, when Kelvin looks at a big man, he's looking at the defense end first. Does the guy have a motor? Does he play hard? Is he agile enough, quick enough to get out there and play pick and roll defense? Is he agile enough to get and monster the post? Is he agile enough to get out of the monster and recover back? Whatever Kalifa does on the offensive end is just going to be icing on the cake. I'm sure his job is to come in there, play post defense. It's to get offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. And I'm sure if he gets an offensive rebound, unless it's a dunk or a putback, he's looking to throw the ball back out to our shooters, what they call a dagger. Really good pickup for the Cougs and Kalifa. And, I think we have a solid 5 guys that play the 4 and the 5. We have Set in there. He came in not last year, but what was it, the year before, and gave us some good minutes when he had those injuries. But that's the way I see our portal additions and who is Terrence.
Okay, how about you, Bill, from a player's perspective?
Well, Terrence, it's just hard to say with Terrence. I think he's going to end up. I think playing at NC State's going to benefit him.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't think it entirely clicked with him. I always thought I liked Terrence from the beginning, and then it dwindled a bit. Steve, I know you were always high on him. I thought that with Terrence, it was always from the neck up, and I think, there may have been a confidence issue there. Yeah, I'm not sure. If maybe not being the man, maybe not getting as many touches. I don't know. But it just didn't quite pan out. So I think, especially for his benefit, it's better that he's at NC State now, and hopefully that works out for everyone. Pop, that was all kind of interesting to me. I'm still not 100% sure. I like the idea of not keeping Pop, because he is such an unbelievably dynamic threat offensively, both from the outside and penetrating. He's a consistent scorer. Our guards are very good, very talented, but they go into slumps, and from watching him when he played at Tech, and assuming he's healthy after the injury year last year at Creighton, he is just a consistent scorer. But I mentioned from the beginning, and this is why I didn't think Yuzhan was coming back either, and that was because you've got three perimeter positions: the 1, the 2, and the 3, and you've got Sharp, you've got Yuzhan, and you've got Pop Isaacs if all 3 are here, and then you've got Flemings and you've got Harwell, in addition to the others, Mercy, McCarty, off the bench. And if you've got 3 perimeter positions, 40 minutes a game, that's 120 minutes. Well, you figure your starters are going to play about, right around 30 minutes a game. So if that's what Sharp, Yuzhan, and Isaacs were playing, that leaves a total of 30 minutes for a pair of 5 stars.
Yeah.
Miller, McCarty. You could probably throw Ramon into that as well. And it just, the equation, the math didn't work. It never worked for me. So I thought there's no chance Yuzhan was coming back. And when he did announce that he was coming back, and then about 13 seconds later, Pop announced that he was going to A&M. I still, regardless of what's coming out of the basketball program, I've got to imagine that this was all prearranged. And I mean, it's not as though there was, Pop's back in the portal. Let's start talking to different teams. I mean, it was Yuzhan's back. Pops is gone. Pops is at A&M. I mean, boom, boom. No hesitation.
Yeah, they even had the recruiting graphic of Pops in A&M gear right at that time.
Here's the deal.
It was teed up. Yeah.
Hey, guys, Kelvin said on that Zoom call there was no contingency plan, but Kelvin would be a great poker player because he's never going to tip his hand. He's not going to let anybody outside the program, know. So, yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
So anyway, I've got to imagine that was the case, and now it works. Now you've got Sharp, Yuzhan, and you've got the 3 position, which we'll talk about who's going to fill that as a starter from the beginning. But now the minutes make sense.
Yeah.
So, that's perfectly understandable. SaCo, I like him. I really like him. Who knows? Maybe the role will not be as extensive. It depends on how McFarland has progressed, and so you'll have a couple guys battling. I think I know for that number 3 big man position behind Tugler and Cenac. But I like SaCo, 6'11", 235. I don't know, Tom, maybe you're right about the 3% body fat being as good as it gets. I thought I was at about 2.7, so
for everyone, that's why you're my hero. That's why you're my hero.
Well, I thought there were about a dozen other reasons for that, but nevertheless, the guy. Offensively, he's a dunker. He doesn't have post moves. He's not going to score from the perimeter. He's a dunker. He's athletic. He runs the floor. He blocks shots. He's a shot blocker extraordinaire. Quite honestly, he's got pretty big shoes to fill coming in for Francis, because Francis was so improved last year and developed his offensive game. He was unbelievable defensively, blocking shots, grabbing rebounds, grabbing offensive rebounds. And I think SaCo can do a lot of that, but he's not going to produce like Francis did. Free throws as well. But he's very athletic, he's very physical, he's going to run the court. He's also coming in with experience. 2 years at South Plains Junior College, the year at Sam Houston. He's never put up huge numbers.
Was it Utah State too, Bill? Did SaCo play at Utah State? I think you mentioned.
Oh, you know what? He did. Yes, you're right. He did play a year at Utah State. That's right. This is his 5th year.
Yeah,
that's right. 2 years at South Plains, 1 year at Utah State, 1 year at Sam. Yes, you're absolutely right, Tom. And never huge statistical numbers, but he does what you want. He is athletic. He runs the floor. He plays defense. He blocks shots. And I think, I haven't seen McFarland since the injury. I haven't heard a whole lot about him.
Yeah.
But I would not be the least bit surprised with the experience that SaCo has if he starts out, because McFarland's never played a college game. I would think that SaCo would very likely start out as the first big man off the bench. But I like him. I like him a lot.
Okay. For me, you guys know, I've got a soft spot for bigs. I hadn't really highlighted any potential players in the portal I really like for next season, but I'm always hoping for an experienced, legit big that's active and can intimidate inside, just like how you've described SaCo. So with Tugler and Cenac as projected starters, McFarland, also already on the roster. It was going to be pretty tough convincing any big name bigs to join the team. However, Sakho was a nice under the radar get from a kind of a depth perspective at the 5, 6'11", 235, like you said, very cut and athletic, and 4 years of experience already under his belt. He did contribute 8.6 rebounds and 1.4 block shots in 25 minutes a game. That's pretty good, shooting 66% from the field, primarily dunking, as you had both highlighted for Sam Houston. So very, very experienced, and I'd say plenty productive for our needs. From an analytics perspective, Sakho had somewhat of a, I guess you can call it a nondescript year, even though the stats look decent at Sam Houston State. He was like a plus 0.5 player box score plus minus for admittedly a very poor 13 and 19 Sam Houston State University team. So for context, he was the second most productive player on that bad team. And also just for fans, just as a reminder, Yuzhan, before he came and joined our program, he was a player box score plus minus 2 at OU before joining. So at the very least, this is an experienced big to play behind Tugler and Senac, and I believe he's more prepared to contribute ahead of Lott, while McFarland, I believe I read that he still needs some time to rehab from his leg injury, so he may not actually be ready to log a whole lot of minutes early in the season. So this gives us at least a little bit of breathing room for him to fully recover and start contributing. Now, when you watch video of this kid play, I do really love his physicality and activeness. But to get any bench minutes, he's really going to have to show Sampson some continuous effort, because at times when I watch some of the games, he appeared to take plays off. And, that's not going to fly in our program. But he has the athleticism and length, as we said. So the building blocks are there for the staff to mold. If you saw the photos, again, as you guys had highlighted, so cut. He's definitely the first guy you want walking off the team bus when we're on the road. So I think we've got that covered. He's a true 5. That's athletic and physical. He appears to be a really good teammate and won't cause any locker room drama. So I also love the pickup. Now, when we look at the finalized roster from an analytics perspective, I couldn't have asked for a better scenario. Obviously, losing Arsenault was a bit disappointing for me, since I've been a big fan of his from the get-go. And I know both of you guys had highlighted, the times I had mentioned even this past season where analytically Arsenault contributed big time, right? He was kind of part of that 3-man lineup, at least early in the season, that contributed a great deal. You guys may have noticed I didn't mention that towards the end of the season, because statistically he also dropped off big time in the last quarter of the season. He was no longer on those lists. For 3 quarters of the season, it was fantastic, and then it just really tailed off after that. So I think it's right for him to go somewhere for a fresh start where he can be featured for his final season. And I commend him for actually sticking it out for 3 seasons with us. And I think Wade and NC State is going to provide him that. So, but to get everyone else that had eligibility on the roster to recommit to run it back from a number 1 seed team is just huge, in my opinion, especially in this era of constant player movement. So with some unfinished business after losing a heartbreaker to Florida in the national championship game, I actually love the opportunity to take another crack at the national championship with this roster intact. Now, from an advanced analytics perspective, we're also talking about getting 3 of our starters and 9 overall returnees back from a team that ended the season number 2 overall in KenPom, 12 in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 3 in 3-point percentage offense, 19th in turnover percentage, and 11th in offensive rebound percentage. Also, again, number 1 in adjusted defensive efficiency, 3rd in effective field goal percentage D, number 5 in 2-point percentage D, 24th in turnover D, 4th in block shots. That's crazy, right? Even with Roberts, Wilson, and Cryer now gone from this defense, we do get 2 of our top 3 defenders back in Tugler, who was a plus 6.7 in defensive player box score plus minus, and Sharp, who was a 4.9 defensive player box score plus minus. Then you factor in the improvement we expect from Yuzhan, who was himself a plus 3.6 defensive player box score plus minus. And the rest of our kids, after getting another year in the program with Ramon Walker leading the way to teach the younger kids. And we're looking to be another top 3 defensive team again nationally, even before considering the addition of our number 1 freshman class. Now, offensively, we get two of our three top players back on that side of the ball as well. With Sharp, he was a plus 5.8 on the offensive side, and Yuzhan was a plus 4.4. Expected improvements from Tugler, who himself was a plus 1.8. And add in three of the top offensive talents coming in, and Senac, Harwell, and Flemings. And we may not have had this much talent on the offensive side of the ball in this entire Samson area at U of H. Now, all of this talent is very young, admittedly, but this could be the first team with the natural talent on it, where offensively we'll finally have the horses to make even our fickle fan base happy. Though statistically, we were elite offensively this season, as we've been really the last couple of seasons. Again, 12th in adjusted offensive efficiency overall in the country, at a staggering 123.4. And as you guys may remember, I thought going into this past season that if we hit 121 in adjusted offensive efficiency, we would dominate in a run towards the national championships. But as elite as we were, even on offense, all of our fans know that we earned that ranking primarily through not turning the ball over, offensive rebounding like crazy, and then getting more shots up than our opponents. So basically, highly efficient statistically, but not quote unquote pretty. Next season will be the first time during the Samson era where we will have the talent with a 3 5-star freshman, where we could have 5 kids on the court at the same time that can all get buckets on their own, one-on-one. So where our offensive efficiency numbers might not be any better as a team than this past season, might be a little bit worse, the fan base might finally quiet down on complaining about our offense, just given the dynamic play of the new kids. So exciting times ahead going into next season. Offline, we've talked about this, but I'm not prepared to say this next team will be better than this past year's team, especially with 3 freshmen expected to play big minutes for us. But I do think that next season's team will be the most intriguing one of the Samson era. It will be the first time where coaches are not relying on staying talent, but trying to weave in 3 potential one-and-done type talents to make another national championship run. Watching the evolution of this team is just going to be so much fun next season, guys. So finally, now that we basically know what our roster is for next season, what do you guys think the rotation will look like? And Bill, you can go first on this one.
Okay. And I'll just, for a second, address what you said, Steve. I wholeheartedly agree with you about this being an unbelievably intriguing team. And I also agree that the potential is sky high, absolutely sky high. But what I don't want to understate, or hopefully have anyone understate, is the fact that we lost 5 players, including Arsenault, but 4 starters. And I mean, Roberts was our offensive go-to guy down low. He had, great moves to the basket, near the basket. Tugler hasn't quite gotten to that point, and he's a little more athletic, obviously, and so we'll see how that plays out. Senac isn't quite that type of player either, so it'll be interesting in terms of how the inside scoring is handled. But I don't think you can underestimate the loss of Roberts. Cryer's shooting. Steve, you and I argued about his defense, but I thought he was a damn good defender last year, a great team defender. Francis, I already talked about everything that he did. And then the guy who just did absolutely everything: defense, rebounding, steals, running the court, just great energy. Of course, Malik Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this team lost 4 really significantly productive and just outstanding players. Leadership, you're replacing 4 seniors with not entirely, but to an extent, with 3 freshmen coming in. So
yeah, that's fair.
There are going to be people that step up from a leadership standpoint. I think Sharp will for sure. Yuzhan will for sure. Hopefully inside Tugler, and I think Ramon will as well. But I don't think you can understate the loss of these 4. I think they were great players for them. And so I just wanted to mention them. In terms of what is going to be on the court now, I think, and I've heard 4 starters for sure: Yuzhan and Sharp in the backcourt, Tugler and Senak up front.
Yep.
The one I think is got to be the third starter, and this would be replacing Cryer to an extent, would be Harwell. I just think, I've heard Ramon, I've heard a couple others. I've heard possibly Flemings, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, starting 2 point guards and maybe not having much off the bench. I think it's got to be Harwell. He's so talented, 6'6", shoots the ball. He's a top. I just think it's got to be him. So I think it's Yuzhan, Sharp, Harwell, Tugler, and Senak. I think the guys that are going to be getting minutes off the bench, I think, Steve, I know you've mentioned Flemings absolutely being the first one off the bench. I think it's either, I don't know that that's necessarily true. Talent-wise, it certainly is, but I think it's either him or Ramon. And it depends on what happens. If there's some foul trouble, maybe with Harwell, if Harwell's not playing well, I think Ramon's the guy that comes in for him. I think Flemings, more or less replaces, gives Sharp his time off, and Yuzhan for sure.
Yuzhan, yeah.
I think Sakho plays good minutes. Again, I just don't know what's going on with McFarland, entirely how healthy he is, but he's also never. I mean, he could put him in the same boat as although not as talented as Senak and Harwell and Flemings, because he's never played a college game. So, it's going to be new for him, even though he's been in the program. But I think the third big man and the first big man off the bench is Sakho. And then, of course, you've got Mercy and you've got McCarty. And I think all of them play. I think the guys who have limited time are going to be Cordell Jefferson. And I think it's just a numbers game with him. You've got Yuzhan at the point. You've got Sharp who can handle the ball. You've got Flemings coming off the bench, the 5-star. I just think that it's going to be awfully tough for Jefferson to get significant playing time, much different than last year when he came in during blowouts. I think with Sakho coming, I think Sed's minutes are going to be probably reduced as well. And I see them being limited. And then finally is the 4th freshman that's coming in, Bryce Jackson. And I've heard good things about him, but I've also heard that and I think you guys mentioned it in the past, and I've heard it since, that he could potentially be redshirted. So those are the 3 that I think have limited. But in terms of what starts, I can't imagine it not being Yuzhan, Sharp, Tugler, Senak, and Harwell.
Very nice. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of common themes as we go through this. Tom, how about your perspective from a coach's view?
Interesting about Bryce Jackson. It wouldn't surprise me at all about him, a redshirt. And I think Kelvin even mentioned the possibility. But think about this: about 5 years ago, we would be doing cartwheels in the street by getting Bryce Jackson.
I know. It's crazy.
Amazing how Kelvin and staff have built this program. Here's the way I see it, and I'm only about 60-40 confident that we'll see the starting lineup. But I'm like Bill. I think when the dust settles, we'll see Milos, Eman, Harwell at the 1, 2, and 3, Senak and Tugler at the 4 and 5. But haven't been through off-season conditioning, haven't been through fall workouts, and guys like Cordell, guys like Ramon and Sed, you know what? They're great teammates, but they're going to teach these 3 5-star freshmen a few things early on. If you know what I'm saying,
yeah.
They're going to be licking their chops to go up against these freshmen, and they're going to teach them their ropes. But I'd like to be a fly on the wall at some of these practices. Milos, E-Man, you can almost etch it in stone. They'll start at the 1 and 2. The way I see it, that other guard spot at the 3 or whatever you want to call it, because Kelvin says the 2 and 3 are interchangeable. I see Mercy, McCarty, and Harwell going after it. I see Flemings as backup point guard to Milos. I do see Milos and Flemings on the floor every now and then together. Like Bill, you said,
I agree.
Not going to start 2 point guards, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them because, Kingston's minutes got to come from somewhere,
Yep.
And getting back to Terrence, if Terrence is back in the program, he's looking at competing at playing time with Harwell, Mercy, McCarty, Ramon. I mean, there's a lot of competition there. Move on to the big guys. I'll tell you what, go back to the Kingston. There was some scuttlebutt about Flemings might not being too happy if Pop had stayed around. Bill, you mentioned that it was, not enough minutes, too many players, not enough minutes, and who knows if that was just scuttlebutt. But it did seem like there was a contingency plan that depending on what Milos did. Cenac, Tugler is our bigs. The knock on Cenac, the one negative, they said maybe a little bit soft. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But very, very talented. Ramon, I could see him coming in there and getting minutes at the 4, but also at one of those wing spots.
3. Yeah.
SaCo, probably the first guy off the bench, and like we said about McFarland, man, we just don't know. Kelvin on that Zoom call when he was talking about the bigs, he never did mention McFarland.
Oh, really? Okay.
He talked about everybody but McFarland, and then he also mentioned that his recovery has taken a long time, so we'll just have to see how that goes. Looks like a really good bench. If you have Flemings, Mercy, McCarty, Ramon coming off the bench, that's a pretty stacked stacked bench. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. I think with Cordell's is a very good insurance policy if one of our point guards gets hurt. Not a whole lot of teams in the country, if they had a point guard go down or maybe 2 guards go down, could throw in a guy as talented as Cordell, because I think he does have talent, but there's a lot more talent on the team than we've had in the past. 4 or 5 years ago, Cordell probably be playing right now.
I know. I probably would have played last year.
One last thing as far as the 5 stars. Kelvin hasn't had a whole lot of 5 stars. The first one I think we had was Quentin.
Yep.
It was Quentin, I think, and Quentin didn't start right away. He didn't start. He was not in the starting 5 right off the bat. He came off the bench, if you'll recall. I don't remember who the guards were at the time. Was it Dijon and Sasser? I'm drawing a blank, but I just know he came off the bench to start the season. The other 5-star he had was Jarris. He started right away, but you could also say that might have been probably Kelvin's softest team, that we had, since he's been here. So it'll be interesting. A lot to look forward to, and who knows what's going to happen on opening night? Who's the combinations? That's going to be really, really interesting. And another thing is that half our games in non-con aren't going to be those 30, 40, 50-point blowouts where you could experiment with different lineups, et cetera.
I expect that.
At least in a game, you can do it in practice, but half our non-conference games are, you're not going to probably do a whole lot of experimentation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think
the thing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind me interrupting for a thing about Flemings, and this is not that he wouldn't get a ton of minutes anyway because he's so talented, but the thing about him that's different from Yuzhan, different from Sharp, and is going to potentially put him on the floor with either of them, Yuzhan, lots of times, is that he is so extraordinarily quick and athletic.
Yeah, it's
and
explosive.
Yuzhan's not, people don't look at Yuzhan and say, God, he's just a phenomenal athlete. Flemings is.
Yeah.
Flemings absolutely is, and doing some of the things that Malik did. Their size isn't entirely different, but in terms of, I mean, Flemings has extraordinary leaping ability. He's ultra quick. He's going to be the best athlete on the team. And last year, Malik was the best athlete on the team. So Flemings could certainly step in, play with anybody, because he's going to be so much different than any of the players that we have. And going up against other teams, really, really solid athletes, he's going to be able to match up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think our roster is arguably the most talented on paper that we've had heading into a season during the Sampson tenure. I know you just mentioned Fleming's maybe the most athletic. Maybe. I mean, Tugler's pretty athletic himself, and I would say Harwell's pretty athletic himself as well. So you've got three very dynamic athletes that will likely be on the court at the same time for extended portions of the game. I mean, obviously looking at the lineup, Emmanuel Sharp, shooting guard, Yuzhan, point guard, Tugler at kind of the 5, returning from the starting lineup. 1 year older and improved is the expectation. So that's going to be huge. 3 of the most talented 5-star freshmen coming in positions of need, and Cenac at the other 4-5 spot, Harwell at the 3, and Flemings at the 1, where we haven't had an impact rotational point guard since we had Giroux, along with Sasser and Shed on the same roster. So that's going to be huge in itself. I mean, just having such a dynamic leader coming off the bench is, it'll be exciting. Key returning players that I expect to make significant contributions in Walker, McFarland, Miller, and my dark horse is Chase McCarty, who I believe will have an outside shot, at least at the beginning of the season, of starting at the 3. Now, I'm in complete agreement with you that things will be different come conference season. But just to start off with, to ease the freshmen in, I think there's an outside chance McCarty starts. Then you have KJ Jefferson, Lott, SaCo, freshman Jackson filling out the roster. And we've talked about Jackson already potentially redshirting, which I think would be a good thing. That is deep and talented, and I just don't even know how these highly touted bench players are going to get any minutes on this.
Why would you say McCarty over Mercy after Mercy played last year and McCarty was redshirted? I know McCarty is coming in as a great perimeter shooter and can hit shots, but
Bill,
Mercy,
I think Kelvin encouraged. Yeah, and I think Kelvin kind of encouraged both of them to redshirt, but it was their choice. And I think Mercy decided he didn't want a redshirt, and McCarty did.
Yeah, and I just think, playing the 3, because I absolutely believe that commitments have been made, and I think it was even mentioned in one of the interviews that Coach Sampson had done, that the commitment has been made to Sharp that he will play the 2. I know we hear interviews where he's saying, the 3 wing players are the same, but no, we have a very distinct, the 3rd wing player always guards a small forward. And I think a commitment has been made that we're going to play Sharp up top next to Yuzhan. And then the 3rd wing player is going to be the one on the baseline that's going to end up having to check the other team's 3. And so with that in mind, I'm not sure Miller is long enough to do that. I believe McCarty is longer and more athletic than Miller. It probably fits that role better. That's why. Because I think Miller would do better top of the key, quite honestly, as a bench player. But
if defending the opponent's 3 is a high priority, I'd be more inclined to think that it would be Ramon, because he has played, he has defended these guys. Talent-wise, I honestly, I don't know if McCarty has a ton more talent than Ramon. He's certainly, in terms of what he's supposed to do, what we've heard that he's going to come in as the more pure shooter and more polished offensively. But Ramon is a damn good defensive player, plays hard, has played and has experience playing.
It could be.
By the way, Harwell's about 6'6", 6'5", 6'6", so he's certainly got the length and the body and so forth to play against opposing threes.
I completely agree. Now, I believe Harwell is going to end up starting come conference time, but I think there may be a process of just easing the kids in, quite honestly, just not applying so much pressure from the beginning. So more of a conscious effort to do that and just let them slowly adjust. They'll get plenty of minutes even during the preseason, but I thought, well, he may, and it may be McCarty, it may be Walker at the 3, but I think it'll be, my opinion, just based on what coach has done before, it'll be a returning player that will start to begin with. Now, all bets are off come conference time. You'll get the best players in. And by then, you hope everyone's already been acclimated to the program where we may see 2 freshmen right in the starting lineup. So we'll see.
Didn't John Rothstein say buy stock in McCarty?
Yeah, he did. Because I think our coaching staff has been leaking some stuff out too to some of these national pundits to say, hey, don't forget this kid. He's been lighting it up in practice. So we'll see. I don't know if it's a smokescreen or reality, whatnot. None of us have gotten to see. So I guess I'm buying into the hype that's been floating out there.
I just think that if it's, I can't see how you keep Harwell on a 5-star, but if Steve, your theory is correct and it is going to be a returning player right off the bat, I cannot imagine it not being Ramon.
Yeah. I mean, Ramon, he's kind of in my mind, he's kind of that jack of all trades that can fill, let's say, 3 different roles. So I thought, well, probably more effective coming off the bench, filling in potentially different roles each game, right? Depending on who gets in foul trouble, who's not performing, he could probably come right off. And so I view Flemings and Walker being the first ones off the bench, whoever the starters are, just to kind of bring stability as well as some flexibility along. So I think it'll be interesting because I think, as Tom had mentioned, right, we've got probably half of our preseason games are gimmies. I expect to see a ton of experimenting with all sorts of weird lineups as well, just to see what clicks, right, and who plays well together. So it'll be fascinating. And when you look at it with Sakho and McFarland with the bigs, you're talking about a solid 9-man rotation that I believe, right, come March can take us to our first national championship again. But of course, we'll get into that as we get closer to the preseason.
Book it now.
Book it now. But I mean, we're going to be able to come in waves, right, with different matchups, just like this past season.
Get your hotel reservations.
Absolutely. But we're going to have a lot more offensive firepower, right? It may be young, but we have not had this level of offensive talent, right? Yes, probably since Phi Slamma Jamma, quite honestly. And you want to talk about suffocating teams? Historically, we've talked about suffocating teams on D. How about this coming season? We're suffocating them on both defensively and offensively and just completely wearing them out. I mean, there's nowhere to hide. And so next season is just going to be a blast. So,
yeah, well, again, I agree that it's going to be unbelievably intriguing. But again, I've seen 5-stars, growing up and watching basketball and everything, not pan out. And I don't think there's any chance that happens with any of these 3.
Yeah,
but
not these 3.
I'm not right off the bat going to say we're going to be absolutely suffocating defensively and offensively. I want to see how they blend into the program and work under what Kelvin expects of them and how this program plays. And don't get me wrong, I think the potential is absolutely there, Steve, for them to be exactly what you're referring to. But I just think it's a little too early to kind of anoint them.
No. I completely disagree. You got to set the expectation. You don't achieve greatness unless you set that expectation. No soft, maybe it will be okay. No. I mean, it's national championship or bust, right? And I got to believe the program themselves are thinking that as well, right? Setting those levels of expectations.
And we got the secret ingredient, guys.
Yeah. We got coach, right?
Yes.
He'll make every team great. Doesn't matter who you give them on the roster. I mean, look at those first few teams that we had, or our first NCAA team that we had that we should have, if not for that lucky shot by Michigan, we would have, I'm fully confident we would have advanced. But if you look at from a talent, pure talent, I mean, that's nothing compared to what he's going to have a chance to mold this coming season, right? No offense to the kids on that team, but guess what? It's kind of continuous improvement as the program has evolved. He's just gotten access to much.
No, there's no question. Right? There's no question about the talent on this team. I mean, it's exceptional. Yeah, I just want to see it play out. Just give it some time. I understand what you're saying about setting the expectations through the roof based on the success that the U of H program has had recently, but then again,
it'll be fun. Have some faith,
and it's not like I'm taking a wait and see approach. I think we're going to be extraordinary this year, and a lot of it has to do with the other teams. I mean, I've looked at some of the conference teams. Tech is top 10. They lost a bunch of players. BYU is continuously.
Yeah, they'll be fun to watch.
Preseason rated as high as 8, as low as maybe 11, and they lost a ton of depth. They don't have nearly what they had coming back in terms of, they've still got a lot of players, and all these teams will have a lot of players, but not nearly as good. Arizona had a bunch of transfers, right? And so their depth is going to be a little shaky. Iowa State, same thing. And Kansas has, they brought in some good backcourt players, but their front court depth is not going to be great this year. And
so, Bill, what are you saying? Are you saying that we should go undefeated in conference this year? Is that?
Well, I'm the one person on this podcast who did not pick us to lose like half a dozen games or whatever you naysayers were predicting last year. Yeah, I mean, based on where things are right now, I don't see us being especially challenged for the conference title.
Yeah, I think most of the experts probably are thinking the same thing. There's been so much turnover, right? You didn't even mention Baylor, right? Not a single player, right? Starter or bench back. That's crazy, right?
Yeah,
they almost didn't need the death penalty.
Yeah, no kidding. It's all a whole completely new roster, which
they didn't need somebody to kill a teammate to kill the program.
Okay, guys. I think that's it. So that's it for episode 52 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. As a reminder, we are in our monthly cadence during the offseason, but as a teaser, we hope to have a slew of special guests on the show for some in-depth discussions, just like last offseason. So please be on the lookout to download and listen as the episode drops. Take care, everyone.